Assalamu alaikum, my name is Jamie Turner. I'm 19 and from Leeds. I converted to Islam over 2 years ago now. I would like to share with you why I decided to become a Muslim. When I was younger, I was brought up in a non-religious environment. My mother would refer to herself as a Christian. She didn't actually practice the religion though. She had me christened as a child, but because she didn't actually practice a religion, I wasn't really taught or given a specific religious tradition to follow. Rather, I was free to choose whichever perspective suited me best. Despite not being given a religious tradition to follow, I did think that when I was younger, I would say I believed in God. I didn't think that it was sensible to say that our existence, the whole universe, came together by chance. And from a very young age, I was interested in questions of God and the purpose behind our lives and so on. So I would say around the age of 7, 8, I would think more deeply about this question, and as a result, I would say I was a believer in God, but not actually believing in a particular religion at this point. As I grew older, I started to question the existence of God and these kind of things. And I would think about this a lot more and more as I got into high school and learned more about different religions and so on. Initially, I started to question the existence of God and became what you call an agnostic. So this is to not know whether God exists or not know whether He doesn't. I wasn't really sure, and I thought that at this stage in my life, this is the most sensible position. I decided, well, if God exists, and because of my background, the only religion which I'm going to follow is Christianity. And so I decided, with no real reason or evidence, to begin to practice the Christian tradition. Due to this problem, being unable to reconcile the teaching of the church and the teaching of the Bible to make sense together, I came to the conclusion that the church and its teachings was wrong, because it's going against the very text, the very book that the whole church is based upon in the first place. Having reached this conclusion, I then began to question Christianity at all. I began to question the validity of the Bible and the claims that it would make about Jesus and so on. So, having started to question Christianity more and more, and question the divine nature of Jesus, or the sonship of Jesus to God as it says in the Bible, I became very unsatisfied with this doctrine and this teaching. So I decided, look, I believe in God, I know that God exists. This creation that we see around us could not have come together by chance. It had to have a cause of its existence, and God is alone, He is one. So I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to worship God, to follow God, to be on the right path. Otherwise, what's the point in our existence? Our life is purposeless. We have no reason to exist other than to go around, have fun, get a job and so on, and then ultimately we'll die. That was a ridiculous idea for me, that this is all that life is. So I decided, first and foremost, to look into Islam. Why? Well, because previously when I was a Christian, I had many discussions and debates with my Muslim friends, and Islam was already something that I saw to be fairly appealing because it was rational. It makes sense of the nature of God, to say that He's one, alone, not like the creation, transcendent, above and beyond it and so on. This makes sense, and that He would send various prophets over time: Abraham, Moses, Isaac, Jacob, Jesus, and finally Muhammad, peace be upon them all, to different nations and different tribes and places. This was something that made sense and didn't create the confusion and the problems about the nature of God that we saw from the Christian tradition. Due to the initial attraction that I got from looking into the Islamic tradition through speaking with my friends, I decided that I want to look into this religion further. I wanted to see whether this religion wasn't just one that was appealing or made sense. I wanted to see, is this the truth? I believe Islam to be true for many different reasons. The first primary reason is about the nature of God. When we look at the universe, we know the universe, the world around us, began to exist. Therefore, it needs to have a cause of its existence. When we reflect on the nature of this cause, it must be transcendent, i.e. above and beyond the universe. It must have been powerful to bring the universe into existence. It must have been knowledgeable because of the complexity and organization we see in the creation. All of these things, basically, when we use a name for all of this cause and all the different attributes it has, we would say God. In Arabic or in Islamic terms, we would say Allah. So that's the first reason. The second would be when we look into the Quran. The Quran, Muslims believe to be the divine revelation from God. When we look at the historical context of the Quran's revelation, we know that this could not have been authored or devised by a human being. First of all is the literary, linguistic challenge of the Quran. In the Quran it says, if you are in doubt about this book which we have sent down upon our servant, meaning the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, then produce just a single chapter like it. When we look into the Arabic language, all of the Arabic texts form into two main literary forms: poetry and prose. Scholars, non-Muslim and Muslim, can now tell us that the Quran, it transcends the very known forms of the Arabic language. It cannot be said to be prose nor poetry. It is something unique, it is something else. And therefore, it couldn't have been authored by a human being because it transcends the very nature of the language itself and therefore is miraculous from that perspective. Another reason would be that the Quran mentions things that couldn't have been known at that time. For example, in the 20th century, we discovered that the universe was expanding. This was mentioned in the Quran 1,400 years ago. When we look at the fact that the sun and the moon and the earth orbit, this is again something we only found out in modern astronomy. This was something that was mentioned in the Quran 1,400 years ago. And all of these many different points. The third point could be about the historical miraculousness of the Quran. For example, again, the Quran mentions things that we've only found out recently, 1,400 years ago. Interestingly, when we look into the Bible, at the time of the Prophet Moses, it says there was a Pharaoh. At the time of the Prophet Joseph, it also says there was a Pharaoh. Now, due to the discovery of hieroglyphics and these things, we found out that actually at the time of the Prophet Joseph, there was no such thing as a Pharaoh. It's a king. Interestingly, in the Quran, when it refers to a Pharaoh, it's talking about the time of Moses or Musa. But when it talks about the story of Joseph or Yusuf, it uses the term king. So this couldn't have been known at that time because the hieroglyphics language was dead at that point. We've only found out recently that this was the case. So we can see again the Quran is mentioning something that could not have possibly been known to anybody at that time, and therefore is a miracle again from that perspective. The fourth point is the mathematical coherence of the Quran. When we look into certain things, such as the amount of times the Quran says the word day or month or different things, we see something quite remarkable. For example, the word day is used in the Quran 365 times. There are 365 days in a year. The word month is used 12. There are 12 months in a year. Heaven and hell are used 77 times, exactly the same. And many other things. So this is another thing that's remarkable about the Quran and is a signpost to the divine. Another point, the fifth point, is that the Quran has never been changed. The scholars of the Quran, Muslim and non-Muslim, unanimously agree that the Quran has remained the same since it is revealed until this day and is memorized by millions of different people all around the world, so it's not something that could be changed. So if we were to throw all of the religious books into the ocean, there's only one book that we could get back in its entirety, it'd still be preserved, and that's the Quran, because no one has memorized the Bible and these other books, and even if they have, they don't agree on which Bible anyway. So this is another point. The sixth point would be about the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, and his life. When we look into his life and the way he lived, we know that this man wasn't or didn't have the psychological profile of a liar. He didn't have the profile of a deluded person. He was truthful. So the fact that we can rationally confirm he was telling the truth means that we know therefore he was a true prophet from God and that Islam is the truth. Another interesting point is that the Quran predicted future events that took place. For example, there was a war between the Romans and the Persians, and the Quran predicted who would be victorious in this battle, and it was proved to be true, and so on. When we reflect upon all of these several different points, we can see that the Quran couldn't have been authored by a human being and must have been the result of God revealing this to the Prophet Muhammad, and it literally being true and what it claims to be. So therefore, it makes sense to say that Islam is the truth, that the Quran is the word of God, and that the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, is the messenger of God. To become Muslim is very easy and very simple. You just have to believe that there is only one God, that He alone should be worshipped, and that Muhammad is His final messenger. And you have to believe this, then declare it by saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, which translates as, I bear witness that there is no God except the one true God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His messenger.